Welcome to this video cast. This is for week 4 for all of the students who've sent emails saying, I'm not quite sure what to do this week. Let's get started. Where do you look to see what you have to do this week? I recommend that you start with the Ozarka College calendar. If you log into my Ozarka and click on the calendar button, a list of different items will pop up. You'll also see that due dates are listed. Thursday, quizzes and exams are due that night. You'll also notice that there's content available and it's going to close on Saturday. Let's take a look at each one of these. The annotated bibliography, there are simply some directions, additional guidelines, just to help you out with what you need to do for the annotated bibliography. So take a look at that, follow those links. What is plagiarism? Sometimes students struggle a little bit. They're not sure exactly how to do the annotations and they accidentally plagiarize. So here are some guidelines that will help you to avoid accidental plagiarism, and you'll also want to click on Open File, open that file up, and take a look at that as well. A quiz on that will be due on Thursday night. And here's the quiz, Avoiding Plagiarizing. Next, I tab my book for easy reference. Well, all this is just a picture of my book. You'll see that there are some tabs in the upper part of my book, and that is simply to make it easy for me to find the places that I use the most when I'm grading students' papers. You can do it too. My goodness, they change the rules so often, and I've been teaching for so long that I can't keep up with all of the changes, so I have to look that stuff up. Well, if I have to look it up, you guys look it up too. It's easy, no problem. Sample annotated bibliography. Well, let's take a look at this. This is what you guys are going to write. Here's the beginning. You'll notice student name, instructor name, name of the class, and the date. You'll also notice the student's last name is the upper right hand corner and page number, upper right hand corner. This student's annotated bibliography is on a single topic. You guys will probably simply delete that and just type annotated bibliography. You'll also notice that the annotated bibliography has a hanging indent. That means the only thing that meets the left-hand margin is this first word. Everything else is indented, and the annotation is indented a second time, so it's easy to see that as separate from the citation. You'll also notice that it's alphabetized. Adams comes before American. We alphabetize by the author's last name if we know it. If we don't have it, whatever the first word is, that's what we'll alphabetize by. And so you won't put this in order of the 10 sources that you gathered. Instead, you'll put it in alphabetical order depending on what your MLA citation is. Well, this MLA citation. How do we do MLA citations? Well, the Writer's Reference website that you went to last week to do those MLA quizzes taught you exactly what you needed to know. You can do all 4 of the MLA quizzes there if you'd like a little extra brush up, and I do believe that I copied and pasted some of those questions exactly into the MLA exam. So be sure that you've looked at those. Use your writer's reference when you take the test and when you work on your annotated bibliography. You paid for that book. Get your money's worth. If you feel a little overwhelmed, you're not sure exactly where to find exactly what you need, page 423 and 424, remember, that's your directory. So if you can't find where to find an article in an online journal, you might highlight it if you have several of those, and there are your directions. Some students are having a little bit of trouble with their databases, work from a database, so let's take a closer look at that. Here's work from a database. This is copied and pasted directly from your textbook, from the writer's reference. What I want to draw your attention to is the fact that anything from a database is done just exactly as the way the source would appear if you had a print copy of it. So databases are collections of magazines, newspaper articles, and journals usually. So you'll figure out what kind of source it is, and this is a journal, see volume and issue. If it were a magazine like this one, then you'd cite it in this way. And here is another journal. The only thing that's different is adding the name of the database. Students are having a little bit of trouble trying to figure out whether or not they've got a database. Here's how you can tell. If it costs money and you can't look at it unless you pay, then it's a database. Databases exist because somebody is making money off of them, and so they don't let you look at that stuff for free. Ozarka budgets, I don't even remember how much last year, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, so that you can access ProQuest, EBSCO, SIRS, and the other databases that I sent you to with the Paul Weaver Online Databases worksheet. So use that stuff. Ozarka pays money so that you'll have access to good, reliable sources that you can use in any of your classes to write a research paper. Some students ask whether or not they can use Microsoft Word to do your citations for you. Well, yes, you can, but Microsoft Word does a terrible, terrible job. EasyBib does a slightly better job, but it's only free for MLA. The Bedford Bibliographer, well, it's not too bad. Let's take a look at the content module for weeks 3 and 4 and see if we have some links there that can help us out. So let's go back to the calendar. And we can get to this link either by following this link, Word versus EasyBib versus the Writer's Reference, or we can click on the content module and we can look at weeks 3 and 4 where this link exists. So you can take a look. Here are some guidelines about how to use citation makers and which ones are good. And here are also some links to some videos that other colleges have created to help you use the Bedford Bibliographer, which does a much better job than Microsoft Word. If you'd like, I can show you really quickly how to do that. Go to google.com, do a search for Bedford Bibliographer, and when you do, this is probably going to be the first site that pops up, bcs.bedfordstmartins.com. I see I'm still logged in. When you get there, you'll see something like this. I believe that you can use the email address and password that you used for the Writer's Reference workshop to do the MLA exercises that you've already done. If you can't use that, then just sign up as a student and use whatever email address, and be sure that you write down your password. I'm going to skip right through here really quickly. You guys would click on New Project, and then you would give it a project name and tell the computer that you want to do your citations in Modern Language Association. If you have other classes, you'll select whatever citation format your instructor tells you to use. I'm going to use something that I've already created, Annotated Bibliography. And here's a source that I've already created for you. The way that you select a source, you just click the drop-down menu, figure out what kind of source it is. If it's a magazine article, click New Source, and a page will pop up. You'll see that this is already filled in, but you have all of these guidelines. Tells you what to capitalize, tells you to put in an issue number if you know one. It also says to not put in the URL if your readers can find something easily by searching online. So we don't use URLs. That means www. whatever. We don't use that anymore. You can also include an annotation. You can put your annotation right here in the bibliographer, and if you would like to put in 2 paragraphs of annotation, feel free to do that. Hit save when you're done. After you have finish that completely, you can either add another source and click New Source, or you can view your bibliography. See how it looks. If you decide to use the Bedford Bibliographer to do your annotations and evaluations, it's going to turn out like this, and then you might want to come right over here to the download button, download that file, and when you download it, this is what it's going to look like. All you have to do is tab in your paragraphs. It will alphabetize it for you, and any errors that you have in there, it's going to have. So you still have to go back and use your writer's reference to correct any errors. And then take a look at each part and make sure that it's done correctly. So yes, you can definitely use the Bedford Bibliographer. So you have some other assignments that you need to do this week. Let's take a look at those really briefly. Of course, you'll have to go through and take your avoiding plagiarism quiz. You'll know exactly how to do well on that. Your Chapter 4 rhetorical analysis, we'll talk more about that in a minute. And this MLA works cited page, my goodness, how do we know that we're going to be successful with that? Use that book. Use that book. If you use that book, that will help you enormously. So, how do you summarize and analyze? Now that you've got your MLA citation correct, how do you do the summary and the analysis? Well, your book can help you. The writer's reference helps enormously. Section A of the writer's reference, you already took a quiz on that, so I know you've already read it. Have you been printing your sources? And when you print them, do you make notes in the margin? You know, you can annotate anything. You can annotate pictures, graphics, advertisements. You can even annotate videos. Glozell, really funny comedian, she basically annotated the lyrics of Keisha's TikTok. So you can do a Google search for Glozell and Keisha, Glozell, Keisha, and TikTok, and you can see a really funny analysis of Keisha's lyrics to her song TikTok. So anybody can annotate anything. All you need is paper and a pen. When you sit down to write your summary, you might want to look at page 75. Here are some guidelines in section A of your writer's reference. And you can also look in your writer's reference for a little bit of help with writing analysis. Page 76 has a sample annotation. So you can take a look on page 76 of your textbook, look in those margins. There's lots of help for you. You can also look through section A3 of your book, and if your authors have engaged in any fallacies like hasty generalization or poisoning the well, take a look and note those in your annotation or evaluation. You might have noticed in section R3 that there were directions for maintaining a working bibliography, and there was a sample annotated bibliography entry. Take a look at that. That's on page 410 of your book. So take a look in the margins, and that tells you more about how to do these annotations. I know I've said this before, but you're printing your sources, right? You're making notes on them because that's going to help you with your annotations. Also, when you send in your research folder next week, I don't care how terrible your printed sources look. Just send me a cheap folder with your messy, scribbled up whatever it is that you did to it, and you'll get points for it, and I'll be impressed with all your hard work. Also, take a look at Chapter 4. Rhetorical analysis, lots of guidelines there. You'll also notice that there's a very careful rhetorical analysis here. Sometimes some students are having a little bit of trouble with the Chapter 3 quiz. The author appeals to what? Well, we're talking about pathos, logos, and ethos. So if the author appeals to pathos, then that means the author's trying to touch your heart in some way. Logos, the author's using facts, statistics, and research to try to make you believe something. If your author is being fair and is qualified and has a doctoral degree, and he has sources who have degrees or in some way are qualified to talk about whatever it is, then that article is said to have ethos. I also wanted to show you really quickly in Microsoft Word that, notice here we've got a hanging indent. Take a look at this. This thing right here, that changes your indentation around. So you can use that to be sure that you have a hanging indent. Well guys, I know that's a pretty long presentation, but I hope that you're feeling a little bit less overwhelmed. Again, if you have questions, please be sure to post those on the discussion board is great. You can also post any questions that you might have in Ozarka right underneath the assignment itself. Students tend to do really well when they get instant feedback, so I'm checking this all the time. So if you guys will use that, we won't clutter up the discussion board with too many different kinds of questions. Post those things right here, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can, or I'll create a video to help you out. I hope you have a great evening. Good night.